test. Perfect. Yep. Hi everybody, and welcome to my session about automatically render diagrams of your team's call flows. My name is Martin. I'm a consultant with TwinCap First. We are a Swiss company located near Zurich in Switzerland. So what is the Microsoft 365 Call Flow Visualizer? It's a PowerShell tool which is used to automate documentation, and I've created it for the community so it's easier to kind of understand what your call flows in team does, where your auto attendants forward to which call queues, and so on. So who in here is a Teams administrator or have configured auto attendants or call queues already? Okay, and who is just responsible for a team which takes calls and nobody? Okay, just technical users, great. Yeah, so how does it work? For this I'm going to show you a very short live demonstration on Mermaid.live, which is the live editor of Mermaid. So just to be clear, that's not something I have to do anything with. It's just there. Everybody can use it. So, okay, the resolution is a little bit small. Let's just try to zoom this out then. Okay. As you can see, on the right side we have two items which are called nodes, and on the left side we have the code or the document. So at first we define that this is going to be a flowchart, and we can say, for example, with TB, which means top to bottom, so that the call flow is rendered from top to bottom. We could also do, for example, left to right. And we have two nodes, A and B. These are the identifiers of the node. And now we're going to link these, and all we have to do, instead of creating or drawing shapes and stuff, we can just type in A goes to B. And then we can see that Mermaid automatically creates the link between the two nodes. It's also very easy to add a third node, for example. So we're going to call this one C. And by using different types of brackets or combinations of brackets, we can also change the shape of the node. So I'm going to call this Watch Martin's Session. Oh, I forgot the arrow. My bad, sorry. So now we have a third node element, and now we can basically do whatever we want. We can go to the end and create a loop and go back to A, for example, so we can create a loop. And that's basically all the Call Flow Visualizer does. It just reads out the configuration from auto attendants and call queues with PowerShell, and then it creates a Mermaid document which is similar to this, but just much more complicated and much longer because there are many elements in this document at the end. So what do we need to get started? You can just download the repository or the script and the code from GitHub, and it's usually run locally. Of course, if you want to, you can also install this or save this on a server and run it automated if you have the credentials, so you can always periodically update the documentation of your call flows. We need a few PowerShell modules like Microsoft Teams, obviously, to read the settings of call queues and auto attendants, and also Microsoft Graph to read display names of users and groups, etc. And then we also need admin access for Microsoft Teams, also user admin, and because we're using Microsoft Graph, we also need global admin to consent the application for the first time. This is one time only, but maybe your organization has already enabled Graph PowerShell, then it's not needed in this case. So now let's do an assumption. So let's assume you have configured a call flow for one department like 6 months ago, or maybe even longer, and now the team leader or the person who is responsible for this queue comes up to you and he wants to know a bunch of stuff like what's happening if somebody calls my team number, who is in the queue, so who is going to answer the calls, how long will the caller be in the queue, and what will happen after the timeout. And now I'm going to show you what I have to do in order to get this information from Teams Admin Center. Just going to make this a little smaller again. So the person who requested the information specifically mentioned the number. So here's no way to see the numbers. So one option is to go through all the auto attendants and search for the numbers. But that's not very efficient. So we can also go to the resource accounts. Then we can see that the number, which was on the slide, is this one. We can click it and see that it's assigned to an auto attendant called PS Test EV Enabled AA. So now we know we have to look in auto attendants. Here it is. Then we go to the call flow. Then we see that it's forwarding to a call queue, which is called Team Green CQ. So we have to leave the auto attendant again and go back to the call queue. Only to see that there is no call queue called Team Green, because the resource account doesn't necessarily have to have the same name as the call queue. Then we can see, so we want to know who is in the queue. We can see we have a few users here, but we also have a group, and the group is not expanded here. So we head over to the Azure portal to see who's in this group. And then we can see that it has 5 members. And finally, we want to know how long is the timeout or the maximum wait time going to be, and what's happening after that. And now we see that it's going yet to another auto attendant. I'm not going to see what's happening in this auto attendant. So now we're going to take a look what happens if we do the same with the Microsoft 365 Call Flow Visualizer. Just pull up my PowerShell here. Oh. So I just have to run the script. I can specify the name of the voice app and the type of the voice app if I like, but I don't have to. If I don't specify anything, it will just open a list view where I can select the voice app I want to generate the call flow for. So as you see, it's not taking very long, and it will create a diagram automatically, which is accurate to what's actually configured in Teams Admin Center. We can also specify custom colors if we like, if we can use company colors and specify them in hex color codes. Now we can see we have the number here on the incoming call. We can see that this one is linked to the auto attendant. There's no business hours or holiday table on this auto attendant, so it won't be drawn. Then next, we can see that the call goes into the queue. Here we can see that because of these dotted lines, that the queue also has its own number. So we see that it's also possible to enter the call flow at this point. And then we have the queue overflow action. Here it just goes to voicemail if there are more than 5 active calls already in the queue. And then we can see all the agents from the group, so we don't have to go to the Azure portal to check. And finally, we can see that we have a timeout of 105 seconds, and then it will forward to an auto attendant, and this one will just play the audio file and then disconnect.
I have a question about that. You never enter the the number, the phone number. You probably did it before, right?
Yeah, you don't have to enter the phone number. What I did here is you can see there is, it says voice app name, so you just enter the display name of the other tenant, not the resource account. And I can show you if I just leave this. If I just run it without any parameters, then I will get a list view. It will read out all of the auto tenants and queues. So you will see an overview of all your voice apps. And on the left side, it's the names of the auto tenants and queues. And what the script does, it just checks which resource accounts are assigned to this auto tenant or call queue, and then it displays all numbers. You can see that the international AAA, it has 2 resource accounts, so both numbers will be shown, and then you will know which voice app you want to read. Just going to cancel that.
Just one question.
Yeah.
How would it handle if there are 2 auto attendants with the same display name?
That's a good question. I think you can also, if you want, you can also specify to generate the diagram for which auto tenant. If you specify the ID, you can do it with ID. If you go into Teams Admin Center and go to the configuration, you can see the ID. Just go.
Because the resource account has a specific.
Yeah, that's the ID of the call queue or the auto tenant, not the resource account. You can see it here in the URL. You just copy this ID. Or if you don't specify anything, then you will be able to say which one it is based on the number. But I haven't thought about that. If that's possible to have 2 other tenants which are named the same. That's true.
It means that you're really badly configured your...
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend that either, to have 2 other tenants with the same name. Also, I think there is still some stuff, if you have like brackets and anything that's really used in Mermaid syntax, then the diagram won't be able to render. I'm still checking out which cases I need to handle and fix. So let's head back to the presentation shortly. This one we already did. And now I want to take a look at a little bit more sophisticated one. This time we will have a holiday table, also business hours, and we will have an overflow queue, and we'll also check out how audio files and TTS greetings are displayed in the diagram. So again, we've specified the name and the type, and this time we're using some additional parameters like export TTS greetings, show TTS greetings, and also audio files. This one will take a little bit longer to run because it's also actually downloading the uploaded audio files into the directory specified. And then you can always see which app it's currently running for. So now you can see we have a different number, and this time that's also a little bit of a special case. If we see the diagram, there is first it's the holiday check, and only then comes business hours. And if you take a look at how it's configured or how it's displayed in Teams Admin Center, it's actually first you configure the business hours, and then you configure the holidays. But with the visualizer, try to do it as accurately as possible to render the diagram. So we can see what happens for each holiday or for each schedule we have in there. And here it's like closed. So if it forwards to another auto tenant, like in the first example, we don't expand this because I think that wouldn't make any sense. Otherwise, the diagram would just get very bloated. So we can just run it for this auto tenant again, so we see what's happening there. But then we check the business hours, or we display the business hours. It supports multiple business hours a day, so if you have a lunch break, it's no problem to render either. Then we can see that it's playing a greeting, so because we've exported this, and the visualizer actually creates an HTML file, so it can be viewed in any modern browser, and I can just...
Welcome to Comsverse. I hope you enjoy my session.
I can just click on it, and it's a really great way to always know which audio messages get played back at which stage in the call flow. That's especially helpful if, for example, you have a multilingual call flow where you have different announcements, different languages, and so on.
Does it also work for an IVR?
Yes, we will come to that later.
So iPhone is more complex.
So, yeah. Oh. Okay, good. Again, we have the call, I call this call distribution from the call flow. So once the call goes into the queue, we can see that we also have, we can see what kind of agent list type it is. Is it a Teams channel, a group, or just users? In this case, it's the channel. We can see the name of the channel. There's also some additional switches to display the direct numbers of people in the queue, or even the opt-in status. Of course, that's now also visible in voice-enabled channels, but we can also have it here. It doesn't really make sense if you're using this as kind of a static documentation, but if you just want the information at the moment, at right now, then it's an easy way to see who's opted in or who's opted out. So here we can see, for example, this user, Bob Jakstrad, is not opted in right now.
I'm sure he'll like to be on the contact center. He doesn't usually answer calls.
Yeah, but he's in the escalation call queue, he's opted in. So we cut him some slack there. And then we can see, for example, all of the timeout and outside business hours or overflow actions, they all go to the same shared voicemail box. So if the visualizer only renders unique objects, so you don't have, except for things like when a call is connected or a call is disconnected or something like that. But the configuration items, they always just show up once. And that's a special case here. For example, we can see that the overflow and the timeout, they both have a greeting. Here we have an audio file greeting, and here we have a text-to-speech greeting, so we can also click that. And then we can see what the text says. But maybe you noticed that there's an additional greeting here, which says greeting MS system message, and that's the default message from Microsoft. And some people are aware, some people are not aware that this gets played back in call queues. There's actually no way to suppress it. If you use an audio file, it will be automatically suppressed, and there's no way to enable it. And if you're using text-to-speech greeting, then there's no way to suppress it. So it will be played back, and the visualizer correctly represents that on the diagram. So it's also great for troubleshooting purposes, or if you hand this to other people in your company, then they will know that there is something getting played back, even though they didn't know it before. Okay, now we're coming to the IVRs. We can render IVRs, including voice responses. If the auto tenant is voice response enabled, we can also see what the keyword is for the voice response. There's support for an operator, and now, since a few weeks ago, we can even read and display the user's personal call answering settings, because that's now also possible to query via PowerShell. And we can also see different routing methods in call queues and the agent list types. These warnings, they just appear because if the conference mode is enabled on the call queue, or if there is a queue, for example, which has no agents in it, then there will be a warning. So this scenario is an example of a support number. This case, or this time, we don't have any holidays, so we just have business hours, and we can see, therefore, there is no holiday table because it's not needed. Then again, we can see greetings. We can see that there is a text-to-speech greeting for the IVR, which just says what the option do. Press 1 for German, 2 for English, or say it into your phone because it's voice-enabled. I don't know if it's really that good readable, but here it says, for example, 1, and the voice response German. Here it says 2, voice response English. So we see what happens if which key is pressed. And 9 is the operator. So it says transfer call to operator, and we can see that this one, it goes to a user, Teams user. We can see that this Teams user has his settings set to also ring another internal user, and once it times out, it will go to an external PSTN number. Here again, we have another user. So if you go check the Teams client of this user, oh, it's locked out. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can see that this user has forwarded his calls to his call group, and we can see who is part of the call group. Now, for the queue, this time we only have users, so we don't have anything like the name of the channel and so on, but we can see that this one is serial routing, so we actually have the correct order of the agents in the queue, and we can see also a little number on the links, so we know which agent will get the call first. And on the right side, it's attendant routing. And again, at the end, everything goes to the same message. So yeah, why did I create this? Because I'm a lazy guy. I wanted to save some time by creating documentation. I think drawing call flows, it's very hard work. Each customer is different. Even if you have a template or anything like that, it's very time and resource intensive, and content and data is always changing. I don't know how many customers called me and they changed their business hours during the pandemic and stuff like that. So, or there's a new agent in the queue, timeouts are changed and so on, and it's really hard to do this as manual work to update the documentation and so on. And as we saw before, getting all this information from Teams Admin Center is quite complicated and cumbersome sometimes. And what the tool does, to me at least, it makes troubleshooting very easy. So if you're not sure where a call flows through, you can just run the script, and then you will see all the messages, all the greetings, all the linked and nested voice apps. Or sometimes I just had a case last week where somebody messaged me on Twitter and said, hey, it's not working. The diagram was not rendering correctly. And in the end, the problem was that there was a voicemail linked Microsoft 365 group, which was deleted. So I told him, hey, check if this, because in the code at the end, the voicemail or the group was not displaying. There was no stuff there. So I told him, check if this group still exists. And then he identified that calls go to a group, and thus it's also very good for discovering these issues or other special cases like the system greeting and so on. And of course, it helps save an enormous amount of time, because we can just run it automated, and it makes it also easy to share. If you, in IT, you configure the call flow, you can share it with the people who actually take the calls, so they have a better understanding of what's going on in your call flows. So where can you get it? It's available for free on my GitHub account. You can scan the QR code if you like, or you can also just Google it, I think. I hope it works from the resolution.
Yeah, it is.
Great. Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
Thanks. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I couldn't agree more. I think it was fantastic. I know we had a few questions. Are there any other questions? If there's not, can I ask one? Have you looked at anything else to kind of document like? Because I've used Mermaid but never kind of thought about it in that way. Have you looked at any other Microsoft 365 stuff that you could capture in a similar way?
Yeah. There's actually, maybe I can show it very quickly. There is a tool called, actually, before I started with this, I was doing some other stuff with DocFX. It's also an open source tool which is maintained by the .NET team at Microsoft, which basically allows you to create your own website like Microsoft Docs. Because I'm a Teams engineer, or I also do Azure stuff and so on, and I always have to consult the Microsoft Docs, and I think they're just awesome. So I started looking into how they are built. Then I discovered that it's basically all just Markdown files which are hosted on GitHub or any other Git repo, really. So, for example, we have our documentation on Azure DevOps. It's basically the same. Every change is tracked in Git, and now we're at the stage where when we have a new customer for Teams direct routing, we just ran a script which will export a bunch of information, like numbers, domains, users, etc. And in the end, there's also an example in the repository to create a diagram for each voice app which has a number assigned. In the end, the diagrams will just be uploaded to the website with Markdown. There is some customization needed for DocFX to correctly then display the Markdown files, but it works really well. So we have fully automated documentation site.
Love that. Any other questions for anyone?
Do you plan to do the contrary?
Sorry?
Like you draw something and automatically creates purpose behind and everything?
Yeah.
Because where we, so usually we document
So usually what we are doing is we have to document and build the diagram so the customer understands how it will work. And he said yes, and we are configuring everything using PowerShell or whatsoever, depending on the number of call queues and resource account to create. But it could be great, so like we just let them the tool and they create a diagram. They don't understand how it works behind, but they still can play with it. And after it creates, well, we have the PowerShell, but we have to use today Visio to make them understand visually how it works. And we have to work with them in an Excel file to create all the PowerShell script. That is already done, but the way that you have been doing it is amazing, because honestly, I hate the Word and the Excel and the PowerPoint. So, and the video is really time consuming. Indeed.
It's the second time I'm very, very bad at it.
I think you were trying to ask a similar question to what we've been on about, was could you do the reverse, where you're obviously visualizing the config, but could you create a visualization tool where you take the config and then make a change in the config and push that change back, or even map out some of that with the customer so it's graphically done, that then pushes the PowerShell back the other way?
It's possible for you to use that. I mean, there's no pressure. Comsverse next year.
It's similar.
But that's already amazing.
Could that be used to play back in what it was 6 months ago?
Yeah, I think that's probably easier to just kind of snapshot, because I'm reading all the information, or the tool is reading all the information, and then theoretically, I think it would be possible to just store everything in an object or in a JSON or something like that. But creating the configuration from the diagram, I'm not sure how easy that's going to be, because if you're running it or if you're copying it from where it's already configured, then it might be possible. But otherwise, you first have to create the diagram and then you read it from the diagram, and I think that's going to be pretty hard, because, yeah, like I said, or the main goal of the tool is to skip the drawing stuff, because it's already there, the data is already there, and if you have to go to the Mermaid Live editor and enter everything manually, then yeah, that won't be too much fun, I guess.
And the last question, maybe.
Can you do the same with the RGS? So
Sorry?
workflows, queues, agent group in Skype. Because that's also something that we have to do. So extract everything in XML, place, so we build this kind of workflows, at least on Excel. And after we can visualize how it works, each let's say, auto-attendance/call queues. Before in Skype it was in 3 different parts or in 5 different XML files when we export. Could you do the same with that?
I didn't understand at first. What did you say, Skype or?
Yeah, with Skype. So
Skype for Business or? I'm not sure if I have never worked with Skype for Business, to be honest. I'm a Teams only guy. I started with Teams, so.
Well, it's almost the same,
Okay.
obviously, but
Yeah, if there is a PowerShell module, I think it would be possible, but I'm not sure if the effort is worth it if everything is moving to Teams, because it was quite a lot of work. I spent a few weeks or months coding and refining this, and I think the hardest part was to get the recursive function to work as I wanted, so that every time it discovers a new nested queue, it will run again until there is nothing else. And right now I'm doing it as well for the user calling settings. For example, if a user, Teams user forwards a call to a call queue, then this call queue should also be put in the nested voice app, so it will run again and again and again. And that was quite hard to achieve, but luckily my brother was able to help me, even though he has no idea about PowerShell, but just about programming in general, so we were able to sort that out.
Well, what I love is all their open source. If anyone wants to get involved, put in a pull request, chat to my